I don't know if that's going to fly in Michigan, but we're going to find out.
You know what's wacky?
We're going to find out.
We're going to find out. And you know what's wacky?
Yeah.
You know what's wacky, though?
Yeah.
Can I just tell you? You know you didn't ask me about?
What?
We got a president of the United States who cares more about the drapes in a ballroom that shouldn't be built than he cares about the war he just got us into, or that he cares about the affordability crisis. That seems to me to be a little bit wacky. So if we want to have a serious conversation about what Michiganders are feeling, I'd love to come back on and talk about getting money out of politics, put money in your pocket, passing Medicare for all.
Okay, we'll do it again.
I'm telling you, none of that is wacky, and that's what Michiganders want.
Brandon Tatum watched this Fox News interview and apparently decided that Abdul El-Sayed was the problem. The problem with that analysis? If you actually listen to the exchange, something very different is happening. Jesse Waters keeps pulling the conversation toward the culture war topics that Fox knows will generate outrage: Sharia law, reparations, transgender healthcare, and religion. And every time Abdul tries to drag the conversation back toward the things people actually have to deal with, healthcare, affordability, jobs, and the economy, the conversation gets pulled right back into the culture war. And then Brandon Tatum watches all of this and tells us Abdul is the one being wacky. Well, we're going to let you hear exactly what Tatum said. But we're also going to slow this down, because underneath all the outrage is a much bigger question. Who benefits when working people are constantly fighting each other over culture war headlines instead of demanding answers about who has the money, who has the power, and who is actually governing this country? Let's get into it.
Let's get to Sharia law. Roll it.
You said getting rid of Sharia law was white supremacy. Let's roll the tape. Go.
I don't have to tell you that the same exact forces that drove native peoples from their land
Here they
2
go.
centuries ago, destroyed Black Wall Street a century ago, bombed a building decades ago, and tried to ban Sharia law not a decade ago, that those forces are alive and well today.
So getting rid of Sharia law.
Hold on. So go live in a Muslim country then. Why are you in a white country then? If white people are so bad and they're just so devastating to your cause, go live in all these Muslim nations. I don't know how many of it, 60, 90 Muslim nations? You got many to pick from. You can Sharia law yourself to the end of time. But yet you want to live in the freedom that is provided to you in a Christian, white, conservative-based country, but you complain about it every day. Roll the clip.
And right there, you can already see the framing. Tatum wants you to hear the word Sharia and immediately think that America is under attack. But let's be precise. There actually has been Republican legislation targeting the issue. Senator Tommy Tuberville and Senator John Cornyn introduced the Defeat Sharia Law in America Act in February 20th, 26. So this wasn't some imaginary issue that appeared out of nowhere. The question is whether the government should be passing broad political measures around a religious legal concept when the Constitution already establishes that American law is supreme. And that is exactly why Abdul's response matters. Because instead of accepting the premise that Muslims are somehow waiting around to replace American law, he starts talking about religious freedom. So let's hear the actual exchange.
White supremacy. Can you explain that one?
Do you know what canon law is? Jesse, I assume you're Christian, right?
Yeah, tell me.
All right, so canon law is the name for Christian law. I don't begrudge you your right to practice your faith as you choose. I don't know why the idea that I could practice my faith as I choose is a problem. Nobody is trying to push Sharia law on anyone else, just like I hope nobody is trying to push canon law on anybody else, because we live in an America where you should have the freedom of your religion. So the idea that you have somebody like Tommy Tuberville, right, who, you know, barely was good at coaching football, is out here trying to ban Sharia law when there's less than 1% of the Muslim community in America, as if somehow Muslims are out here trying to push Sharia law, that seems to me to be deliberately targeting the Muslim community because they're different. And I'm just saying that, like, I have no issue with people practicing their faith. In fact, I would never want somebody to push their faith on me, and I would never want to push my faith on somebody else.
Time out. Here is the problem. When you are pushing your faith is antithetical to our faith. We are a Christian nation. We were founded on Christian principles. We weren't founded on Islam. And if you really practice Islam to its fullest extent, that means that we are the infidel. That means that we should be killed. Let you go. Can you proselytize in the West Bank, in Gaza, in Iran? Can you proselytize? That means, can you witness? Can you share the gospel of Jesus Christ in these countries? No, because it's antithetical to your faith position. So when you, and Christianity don't have any basis to hate others based on their religion. Christianity is not written in their book that they hate other people. It's not written in their book that they can't coexist. It's written in your book that you can't coexist. That's why these Muslim nations, only majority Muslim nations, don't have Christians in it. Or they used to be Christian, now they Muslim. Why? Because they've been, it's called conquest. All right, roll the clip.
Good, because no one wants you to get rid of your religion.
And so the idea,
no one wants that.
So, but when people preemptively go out there and start preemptively passing laws to ban something that's not happening, what you're trying to do is target a very small community because they're different. And this operates. I mean, look, I'm just going to say, there's statistical evidence that the president
Sharia
and the vice
law in
president
Michigan
like
is
to
kind of
target me
scary.
simply
People
as a
don't
function
go
of my
for
faith.
that.
You know what the issue is in America, in Michigan?
What?
The issue that people are worried about is not that somehow somebody's going to come and push Sharia law on them. The issue in Michigan is people are worried about how they're going to afford their gas. The issue in Michigan is how am I going to see it?
Yeah, that's a bait and switch. We worry about gas, Sharia law. This. Now we in control. And now we in control. Now your women can't wear this and can't wear that. Can you tell me why in the Middle East they got stuff wrapped all on their heads? A female mutilation, genital mutilation. Why do those things exist? That's in the Quran. Or is it not? Okay, that's what I thought. All right, let's move on to reparations, what he said about reparations.
Now, I'm going to give Abdul credit where it's due, but I'm not going to pretend every part of that exchange was perfect. The strongest part of his argument is the basic constitutional principle. You don't need to be Christian to be American. And you don't need to be Muslim to defend a Muslim American's right to practice their religion. That's the point. But Tatum's response reveals something else. He keeps presenting Islam as if the existence of Muslims exercising religious freedom is itself evidence of a coming takeover. That is a massive leap. And notice what happens next. The conversation moves from religious fear to reparations. And once again, the question becomes whether we're going to talk about history, public policy, and material consequences, or whether we're going to turn everything into another culture war fight.
Reparations. Do you support that?
I think we need to have an honest conversation about the incredible debt that was put upon black folks as a function of slavery that we have yet to pay. And I just think that's fair. Like if people are enslaved and forced into servitude, and then we don't actually have a conversation about all that was owed, that our own country agreed was owed, I just think that it's past time to have that conversation. That shouldn't be a crazy thing.
Time out. And the funny thing is that Democrats are the one that did not fulfill on the promises that a Republican implemented for 40 acres and a mule. It was a Democrat who did not fulfill on that promise. So I don't want to hear nobody talk about Democrat, Republican if you're not going to address the Democrat position of failing the black community from start to finish. From the foundation of the Democrat Party to today, they failed. How are you going to give reparations? And how far back does reparations go? To be honest, black people, and I'm black, how about we go to Africa and get our reparations from them? They the ones captured us and sold us to people all over the world. South America, United States of America, Britain, in the Caribbeans, you name it. They the ones sold it. How about we go to Africa and take back reparations and our resources that was deprived from us by other black people? Oh, y'all don't want to talk about that. Yeah, it's like saying natives need reparations for other natives. Because last time I checked, the Pasquayaki in Arizona, the Aztecs and all them, they didn't scalp and killed to conquer and get to the exemplification that we now know them to be today. How did they get there? Everybody owe everybody reparations. Shut your sorry self up. I tell you what, black people owe black people reparations for all this killing that's been going on in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. How about we talk about that? All that drug dealing, selling dope to your own brothers and sisters, leading cause of death for black people in America for the last 100+ years have been at the hands of other black people. How about black people pay black people reparations? Oh, we don't want to talk about that. It's too late to pay reparations. And you could say, I don't mind a person trying to challenge the idea of giving reparations, but then how are you going to implement it? It's just talk if you don't have an implementation tool. Roll the clip.
I understand that, like, for folks who really want to inflame culture war, I just think it's important for us to think about how do we make sure that communities like the city of Detroit that have been segregated so that you have a disproportionate number of people as a function of redlining who are forced into certain communities, how do we make sure that their schools are made whole? I'll just tell you this, in the city of Detroit right now.
We'll move on. Redlining, I got to move on because we got other stuff. But the redlining, quit lying about redlining. Majority of the people who were affected by redlining were white by sheer number. Why we don't talk about the white people that were affected by redlining? Because you stupid. All right, next clip.
I respect the fact that you came on. I don't think you've really looked into some of the policies you're pushing. You seem a little naive, Abdul. I give you credit for facing the music, but some of the stuff's just straight up wacky. You know? I don't know if that's going to fly in Michigan, but we're going to find out.
You know what's wacky?
We're going to find out.
We're going to find out. And you know what's wacky?
Yeah.
You know what's wacky, though?
Yeah.
Can I just tell you? You know you didn't ask me about?
What?
We got a president of the United States who cares more about the drapes in a ballroom that shouldn't be built than he cares about the war he just got us into, or that he cares about the affordability crisis. That seems to me to be a little bit wacky. So if we want to have a serious conversation about what Michiganders are feeling, I'd love to come back on and talk about getting money out of politics, put money in your pocket, passing Medicare for all.
Okay, we'll do it again.
I'm telling you, none of that is wacky, and that's what Michiganders want.
We'll do it again,
I look forward to it,
Abdul.
Jesse. It was a good conversation.
All right, thank you so much. Good luck in Michigan.
See, at least I don't dodge you.
No. Yeah.
Thank you.
Like 25%.
And that final exchange is where this whole segment becomes much more interesting. Because Brandon Tatum spends a lot of time trying to make Abdul El-Sayed sound ridiculous. But listen to what Abdul actually does. When he's asked about reparations, he doesn't simply say, give everybody a check. He talks about the historical debt created by slavery and about public policies that shaped where Black Americans could live, work, and send their children to school. His comments specifically point to segregation and redlining in Detroit. You can disagree with the policy of reparations. That's completely fair. But pretending the underlying history is imaginary is not. And there's another important distinction here. Tatum tries to turn the conversation into a competition between Democrats and Republicans. But the real question isn't which party gets to claim the moral high ground. The real question is, what did government policy actually do? Government policy created slavery. Government policy later enforced segregation. Government policy helped determine access to housing, education, and wealth. So when someone says those policies created long-term consequences, the serious response isn't to scream, "What about Africa?" The serious response is to examine the historical record and then debate what, if anything, government owes people today. That's what an adult political conversation looks like. And then we get to the funniest part. Tatum's own clip eventually reaches the moment where Abdul says, "You know what's wacky, though?" And what does he call wacky? Not someone's religion, not reparations, not whether somebody's cultural identity makes you uncomfortable. He points to a president spending political energy on a massive White House ballroom while Americans are dealing with affordability problems. And here's where the criticism gets especially uncomfortable for the right. The ballroom is not fictional. The project is real. And the Supreme Court recently allowed construction to continue temporarily while litigation over the project proceeds. Reporting has put the project around $400 million, with additional questions surrounding associated costs and funding. Meanwhile, affordability really is one of the major issues heading into the 2026 midterms. Food, energy, and housing costs remain major concerns, and recent polling and economic reporting show that voters continue to be deeply concerned about the cost of living. So when Abdul says, essentially, why aren't we talking about what people can afford? That's not some radical question. That's politics. People need healthcare. People need affordable housing. People need groceries they can actually afford. People need jobs that pay enough to live. And people in Michigan don't magically stop caring about those things because Fox News puts a camera in front of them and starts asking about Sharia law. That's the bigger problem with this entire style of political commentary. The culture war is incredibly profitable. It gets clicks. It gets angry television segments. It gets people yelling at each other online. But while everybody is arguing about the latest outrage, the people with actual economic power keep doing business. And that's why I'm much more interested in the question Abdul raised at the end. Who is actually going to make life more affordable for ordinary people? Because you can spend all day arguing about which religion is supposedly threatening America. You can spend all day arguing about whether reparations are a good idea. You can spend all day fighting over the next culture war controversy. But none of that pays somebody's rent. None of it lowers their grocery bill. None of it makes healthcare affordable. And none of it answers why working people are being asked to fight each other while wealth and political power remain concentrated at the top. So yes, Brandon Tatum thought Abdul El-Sayed was wacky, but once you actually listen to the conversation, maybe the bigger question is whether we're allowing the people on television to decide what we're supposed to be angry about. Because if they can keep us fighting each other, they never have to answer the harder questions. Who has the money? Who has the power? And who is actually benefiting from the system? That's the conversation I'd rather have. If you believe politics should be about improving people's lives instead of manufacturing another culture war every single day, subscribe to The Honest Perspective. I'm Neel. Follow the money, question the power, and never let outrage replace the facts. That's The Honest Perspective, and that's where I'll leave you.